So thanks, Jim, for that introduction, and thank President Gee and Ohio State for hosting us today. I first came to this campus in 1975. My sister was a graduate of Ohio State. I saw Archie Griffin play in that small stadium you have, like, what is it, 500 seats or something? But I also want to welcome those who are watching via the webcast. For both people here today, watching over the web, please feel free to tweet throughout the morning using the hashtag Global Cities. So this initiative and this forum could not be more timely. For the past 3 years, Brookings has been boringly consistent about the economic challenges facing our country. At the most basic level, we need more jobs. 11.2 million by one estimate, to recover the jobs lost during the downturn and keep pace with population growth and labor market dynamics. Beyond pure job growth, we need better jobs to grow wages and incomes for lower and middle class workers, reverse the troubling decades-long rise in inequality. There is no easy fix to achieve these twin goals. One thing is clear. We need to purposely restructure our economy from one focused inward and characterized by excessive consumption and debt to one globally engaged and driven by production and innovation. So today I'm going to make 3 points. First, in the aftermath of the Great Recession, we must pursue a different growth model, a next economy that is driven by exports and global engagement, powered by low carbon and advanced energy, fueled by innovation, both ideas and manufacturing, and rich with opportunity. So this is a vision where we export more, we waste less, we innovate in what matters, we produce and deploy more of what we invent, and we ensure that the economy actually works for working families. Second, this next economy will be largely metropolitan in form and in function. Our major metros already generate more than 3/4 of gross domestic product. They concentrate the production of advanced goods and services that we sell abroad. They are the logistics hubs of the global trading system. And as you will see, Ohio and Columbus's metropolitan manufacturing export profile, what you produce, what you trade, is highly distinct. And finally, metros are driving innovation in practice, in policy, in the formation of global trade links. The state of Ohio and its large metros like Columbus are part of this innovative wave, with metropolitan strategies to strengthen their manufacturing base and build their export economies from the bottom up by innovating locally, advocating nationally, and networking globally. And it's really a pleasure to have Mayor Coleman here with us today. So let me begin by offering a vision for the next American economy. Let's visualize an economy where more firms in more sectors trade more goods and services seamlessly with the world, particularly those nations that are rapidly urbanizing and industrializing. Why exports? We've crossed an economic Rubicon. Together, Brazil, India, China accounted for about 1/5 of the global GDP in 2009, surpassing the US for the first time. The BIC share will grow to more than 25% by 2015. The rise of the BICs reflects the rise of metros. For the first time in recorded history, more than half of the world's population lives in cities and metro areas. By 2030, the metro share will surpass 60%. Rising nations and their rapidly growing cities and metros now power the world economy and drive global demand. The locus of economic power in the world is shifting. The top 30 metro performers today are almost exclusively located in Asia and Latin America. The 30 worst metro performers are nearly all located in Europe, the United States, and earthquake-ravaged Japan. The U.S. needs to reorient our economy to take advantage of this new demand. In 2010, exports made up only 13% of the GDP of the United States, compared to 30% in China, 29% in Canada, and much higher levels in India, Japan, and the entire EU. And obviously, the EU masks the power of the German Republic. The movement of freight in the United States is compromised, undermined by transport networks that are clogged and congested, and an infrastructure that, frankly, is third class. And culturally, Americans don't get out much. Only 28% of our population has a passport. So can we get back into the export game? We think the answer is decidedly yes. We are having a mini export renaissance in the United States, Export sales grew by more than 11% in 2010 in real terms, the fastest growth logged since 1997. Incredibly, exports were responsible for 46% of GDP growth between 2009 and 2011. For all the talk of a post-industrial economy, the United States remains a manufacturing powerhouse, exporting $944 billion in manufactured goods in 2010. This made us the third largest manufacturing exporter in the world, behind China and Germany. We still manufacture a range of advanced goods that the rest of the world wants: aircraft, spacecraft, electrical machinery, precision surgical instruments, high-quality pharmaceuticals. To paraphrase the old motto for Trenton, what the U.S. makes, the world takes. But this is not just about the advanced manufacturing of high-value goods. America is the #1 exporter of private services in the world, exporting $518 billion in services in 2010, which gave us $160 billion trade surplus. In 2010, U.S. exports of private services represented 14% of global service exports, more than double the share of Germany, the second-ranking country. America's potential for exports is hidden in plain sight, and President Obama's 2010 challenge to double exports in 5 years was exactly the kind of ambitious, far-reaching goal we need post-recession. Now, low carbon and advanced energy are the second hallmarks of the next U.S. economy. Let's imagine a world where America is the vanguard of the clean, green industrial revolution. Everything is changing. The energy we use, the infrastructure we build, the homes we live in, and the office and retail buildings we frequent, and the products we buy are shifting from modes that are outdated to systems that are smarter, faster, more technologically enabled, and more environmentally sound. Now, our competitors, China, Germany, Brazil, they've embraced the clean economy, and they're creating markets, growing jobs, stimulating investment. Can the United States even play in this energy revolution? Our research shows that we already have a strong base of 2.7 million clean economy jobs in sectors ranging from renewable energy to pollution reduction. To put that number in perspective, the clean economy is nearly twice the size of the biosciences field, 60% of the 4.8 million strong IT sector. As you can tell, it is more jobs than fossil fuel-related industries. For our purposes today, the clean economy is an export powerhouse. In 2009, clean economy establishments exported almost $54 billion, and significantly, clean economy firms are twice as export intensive as the national economy, a solid platform to serve the demand for sustainable growth as rising nations continue to urbanize. So this leads naturally to a discussion of innovation. The U.S. must continue to be the world's innovation nation, a hothouse of invention and the platform for advanced production. For the past 2 decades, the discussion of innovation has narrowed, positioning it as something only conducted in the ivory tower or among exceptional entrepreneurs like Steve Jobs. We forgot something early generations intuitively understood: the inextricable link and virtuous cycle between innovation and manufacturing. Although the manufacturing sector comprises only 11% of GDP, or only actually 9%, or as there's only 9% of jobs are in manufacturing, about 35% of all engineers work in manufacturing. Although the sector comprises only 11% of GDP, manufacturers account for 68% of the spending on R&D that is performed by companies. And manufacturing is responsible for 90% of all patents in the United States. Going forward, we will innovate less if we do not produce more. We must make things again. Can the United States seize the future and realize its potential as an innovation nation? Market dynamics are changing globally. The offshoring of manufacturing was rooted in harsh economic realities: rock-bottom wages in nations like China, the aggressive attraction strategies of foreign governments. Yet labor costs are now rising in China. Concerns persist about the protection of intellectual property. Energy can be cheaper here and more reliable. And the tsunami in Japan, the world's main supplier of many high-tech companies and a critical partner to the United States, revealed the fragility of far-flung supply chains for many U.S. companies. there is strong evidence that we are experiencing a manufacturing moment. The manufacturing sector has contributed 38% of GDP growth post-recession. And finally, the next economy has the potential to be opportunity-rich. Research shows that firms in export-intense industries pay workers more and are more likely to provide health and retirement benefits. Yet building the next economy will require the U.S. to get real smart, real fast. Over the next several decades, African Americans and Hispanics will grow from about 25% to nearly 40% of the working age population. We are demographically blessed, yet the rates of educational attainment are lowest among those fast-growing groups. In 2010, only 19% of Hispanics, 25% of African Americans had completed an associate's degree or higher, contrasting sharply with the rates for whites and Asians. In the decades ahead, upgrading the education and skills of this diverse workforce is no longer just a matter of social equity. It is an issue of national competitiveness, and I would argue national security. So here's my second proposition. The next economy will be largely metropolitan and form and function. This is the real heart of the American economy. 100 metropolitan areas that, after decades of growth, take up only 12% of our land mass, harbor 2/3 of our population, and generate 3/4 of our GDP. This is the new economic geography, enveloping cities and suburbs, exurbs, and rural towns, and they pack a powerful punch. Metro areas generate the majority of GDP in 47 of the 50 states, including such quote-unquote rural states as Nebraska, Iowa, Kansas, and Arkansas. Ohio is a supercharged metro state. Your top 7 metro areas house 71% of the state's population, 78% of your GDP. All 16 of your metro areas, 81% of the population, 86% of your economic output. On exports, at the national level, the top 100 metros dominate. 2010, they produced an estimated 65% of U.S. exports, 3/4 of service exports, 63% of manufactured goods that are sold abroad. And giving their edge in sectors like chemicals, consulting, and computers, the top 100 metros are on the front lines of commerce with China, Brazil, and India. Top 100 metros drive exports for another reason. These are the logistical hubs, concentrating the movement of people and goods by air, rail, and sea. Now, obviously, metros don't exist in the aggregate. They have distinctive starting points, they have distinctive assets, attributes, and advantages. Each U.S. metro, including this one, presents a different economic face to the world, and our research, with J.P. Morgan's help, is digging deep to unveil the export and innovation profile of each of these metros. Here you see our supersized performers. L.A., New York, which both exported nearly $80 billion in 2010. Chicago, Houston, which topped $48 billion that year. Now the top 100 metros, including Dallas, San Francisco, Seattle, Philly, Boston, Detroit, all exceeded $26 billion in exports. Taken together, these metros account for 28% of all exports in the United States. This is not just about the large diversified economies. These 10 metros, including Youngstown, Toledo, and Cleveland, are the fastest, or saw the fastest manufacturing-driven export growth, all having more than 88% of their 2009-2010 export expansion coming from goods production. And a completely different set of metros, including Columbus, are implicated by the rapid rise in education exports and the attraction of foreign students. Boston leads with education, providing 4.8% of their total exports. The export economy, unlike the consumption economy, is highly differentiated. A Walmart outside Columbus is the same as a Walmart outside Charlotte. Same design, same footprint, same goods. A housing subdivision outside of Denver is the same as one outside Detroit. But what makes Columbus special is different from what drives Charlotte or Denver or Detroit, or for that matter, Cleveland, Cincinnati, or Akron. Let's dig deeper into Columbus. You're the 35th largest metro exporter. You sent close to $8 billion in goods and services abroad in 2010. Your exports support more than 55,000 jobs. Your export intensity lags the nation, but that's typical of state capitals, where the government is unusually large. Services make up about 39% of your exports, larger than the national share of 33%. Business professional services, travel and tourism, financial services. Despite your service intensity, manufacturing is a critical base for your global competitiveness, contributing more than 60% of metro exports. That's transportation equipment, that's chemicals, that's machinery. Today, we're releasing a report, an interactive data platform that unveils the geography of manufacturing in the United States and the unique production profile of each metro area. And I'd like to thank J.P. Morgan Chase. I'd also like to thank Alcoa and the Cerdna Foundation for their support of this work. As you see here, each of Ohio's metros has distinct manufacturing specialties. Digging into Columbus, we find a metro with more than 63,000 manufacturing jobs, 29th among the top 100 metros. And as with exports, the large services sector in Columbus results in lower manufacturing intensity, but we do find manufacturing in Columbus growing faster than the national average in the wake of the recession. The metro's top 5 manufacturing sectors make up 61% of production employment. So this is the story, and it reveals why cities and metros power our economy. Hyperlinked networks of private firms, universities like this one, public and nonprofit institutions, they fertilize ideas, they extend innovation, they enhance competitiveness, and they collaborate to catalyze economic growth for the entire region. Last point. Metros are driving innovation in practice, in policy, in the formation of global trade links and networks. Now, this is a big structural shift, and the ambassador and I were talking about this last night. Setting and stewarding a strong export economy has traditionally been almost the exclusive role of the federal government in the United States, given its power over trade, taxes, and currency, and its investments in innovation, human capital, infrastructure, and export promotion and finance. Yet with partisan gridlock in Washington, even the easy stuff has become extraordinarily difficult. And in this polarized environment, metros, already the engines of the national economy, are doing double duty, and they are helping set a strong pro-trade platform for an export nation. 3 things are happening. First, metros are innovating locally with metropolitan business plans that exploit their distinct competitive advantages in the global economy. Over the past year, Brookings has worked closely with leaders in Northeast Ohio and a number of other metros, LA, Minneapolis, St. Paul, Portland, Seattle, Syracuse, to invent and then to pilot actionable business planning. The elements of business plans are fairly simple and straightforward. They've been used in the private sector for decades. Each metropolis does a market assessment of their unique economic profile and potential, what goods and services they trade, which nations they trade with, where trade trends are likely to head given market dynamics here and abroad. This is Moneyball for metros, right? I don't look like Brad Pitt, but this is Moneyball for metros. Armed with this information, metros then set goals and objectives that build on their distinct advantages, devise strategies to meet those goals, and establish metrics to gauge progress. And then all these efforts are undertaken by a consortium of corporate, government, university, and civic institutions that cut across jurisdictions, cut across sectors, cut across disciplines, and collaborate to compete globally. LA's plan is distinctive in multiple respects. They've created a new LA Regional Export Council to identify and proactively support export-ready firms in their leading sectors. It's smartly focused, targeted on boosting exports in 12 industries, including aerospace, computers, pharmaceuticals, professional services, and obviously Hollywood. Northeast Ohio's plan is also unique. It brings together a disparate group of business intermediaries and universities in 4 closely clustered metros: Cleveland, Akron, Youngstown, Canton, almost a macro metropolis. They're aimed to help small and medium-sized manufacturing firms retool their facilities, retrain their industrial workers for sectors poised for growth: fuel cells, electric vehicles, medical devices. Now, as with LA, the Northeast Ohio plan is not shelfware. Firms are already engaged, and the early returns for firm restructuring and job growth are very positive. And Brad Whitehead from the Fund for Economic Future is here today to share that story. Look, there are other efforts underway in Ohio. I want to commend the Columbus Council on World Affairs with support for Columbus 2020, the Columbus Foundation, and the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission for positioning this region for a new wave of global engagement. So having innovated at home, metros now have the legitimacy to advocate nationally for federal and state policies and practices that boost metropolitan exports. What do metros want? They want the federal government and the states to set a solid platform for export growth generally. At the same time, they want the feds and the states to be nimble enough to align specifically with the distinct visions and strategies of disparate metros. So let's be frank, there's a lot of work to do here to meet metropolitan expectations and to realize metropolitan potential. Many states took the easy route over the past 2 decades. They reduced their focus on promoting exports and attracting FDI. Pennsylvania and Florida, 2 exceptions. The Commonwealth of Pennsylvania has a Center for Trade Development with 22 foreign trade offices located throughout the world. In 2010, it assisted 1,350 companies, generating close to $500 million in new export sales. Most similar to the effort now underway in this state is Enterprise Florida, a public-private corporation with a regional focus for growing exports and creating jobs, whose export assistance and business development efforts added $3 billion to state economic output in 2011. Last week I was in Brazil. Trust me, they know who Enterprise Florida is. They know what the Pennsylvania Center for Trade Development is. Now, with the formation of Jobs Ohio, this state is getting back in the game. The Third Frontier Fund, replenished through a $700 million bond referendum in 2010, is already considered a model for state support for technological innovation. Ohio's network of Edison Technology Centers is also considered first in class. And we took a trip to the Edison Welding Institute yesterday. It showed how these centers are placing Ohio on the global innovation map. And while the Jobs Ohio effort's still early, their focus on attracting FDI and empowering the distinct regional economies of the state is solid and sound. Now, with partisan gridlock, the federal lift will be heavier than the states. I'm just assuming little happens this year. If we're lucky, reauthorization of the Ex-Im Bank, which in past decades was a no-brainer. Maybe we get a short-term national transportation bill. But when this election is over, whoever wins, U.S. metros and their states should demand real action. A new round of trade agreements that open up foreign markets to U.S. goods and services, fierce protection of intellectual property rights of American businesses around the world, a true national freight strategy that modernize air, rail, sea, and land hubs and corridors. One other thing, metros and their states should play a key role in the streamlining of federal trade agents and services. President Obama has proposed consolidating 6 agencies involved in trade activities: U.S. Department's core business and trade functions, the SBA, the Office of the U.S. Trade Rep, the Ex-Im Bank, and OPIC. This consolidation would be an absolute failure if it just moved agency boxes around in Washington, D.C. The key to success is to integrate activities on the ground so that local representatives of these federal agencies operate as a unified team with metropolitan areas and states. One set of export objectives, one set of performance metrics, and a clear system of referring businesses to the services they need. One final piece to the export puzzle. Beyond innovating locally, beyond advocating nationally, U.S. metros are starting to network globally, creating and stewarding close working relationships with their trading partners in both the mature economies like Germany and Japan and rising nations like Brazil, India, and China. Now, strong connections already exist. Metros with concentration in financial services like New York are forming tight networks with similarly focused metros around the world. Metros with concentrations in advanced manufacturing like Detroit and Cleveland are similarly linking with metros in both developing and rising nations. And the port metros like LA are making key connections with the world's air, rail, and sea hubs. Now, these networks obviously start with firms and ports that do business with each other. But over time, they extend to supporting institutions, governments, universities, business associations that provide support for companies at the leading edge of metro economies. In many respects, these 21st century networks are not new. They harken back to the way the global economy evolved before the rise of nation states, when historical trade routes flowed through cities and deep trading relationships were forged between cities. Between the dawn of the Common Era and the 15th century, a flourishing Silk Road connected cities in East, South, and West Asia with their counterparts in the Mediterranean and European world, as well as parts of North and East Africa. Each city had distinctive concentrations and specialties. Cities in China traded silk, teas, and porcelain. Cities in India traded spices, ivory, textiles, and pepper. Cities in the Roman Empire exported gold, silver, glassware, wine, carpets, jewels. You get the lesson. Like today, the city economies of the ancient and the medieval worlds were distinct economies, and places grew and flourished as they built on their special strengths and distinctive locations. So as we begin the Global Cities Initiative, I want to end with this tantalizing prospect. A new Silk Road is emerging as we enter what is clearly an urban age and clearly a metropolitan century. Cities and metro areas are not only the economic engines of nations, they are the spatial backbone of trade, global trade and exchange. In a world where people and societies live, operate, communicate, and engage through networks, this new Silk Road is emerging as a super network of trading cities and metros, economically collaborative and globally fluent. For the United States, the new Silk Road is a path back to shared prosperity, sane and sensible growth that works for companies, cities, and consumers. For the world, it is a path towards reducing poverty and generating wealth. Let us build it, let's nurture it, let's extend it to all corners of the earth. Thank you very much.